Water is the giver of life. It is exactly what we all need to survive. Its cycle shows us how life works. It helps us see that life repeats throughout the world. The hydrological cycle works from evaporation, where the water joins the air, condensation, where the air cools and creates clouds, precipitation, where the water falls as rain, infiltration, where the water from the ground enters the soil, and from there, the water flows back to the sea, ready to start the cycle again. With the absence of water, our life will be far different. There will be no trees, there will be droughts, there will be no dispersal of nutrients, we cannot clean and break down our wastes, there would be no reproduction, we can lose our primary source of food, or in short, we cannot survive and there will be no life. We need to learn how to value, sustain, and take care of the water we have, because water cycle reminds us that our own lives also work in phases.
Water cycle is a simple circular cycle of evaporation, condensation, and precipitation on Earth, the flow, and store, where water cycle contribute to ecosystem, resources, and our daily lives. Water cycle can change in many reasons that affect the life on Earth. One of that is the anthropogenic effects. Anthropogenic caused or produced by human being or human economy and social activities. Anthropogenic effects include pollution, climate change, habitat alteration, overexploitation, and invasive species. And water cycle changes caused by anthropogenic effects depend on the types and intensity of human impact on the geography and size of the territory where these changes occur, that include forestry, urbanization, and flowing of lands. Classification of human activity factors. There are many types of human activity which can affect the water cycle in different geographic conditions and time-space scale from local to global. First, factors connected with the transformation of the Earth land surface. It's about forest clearance and afforestation, natural and artificial, land flowing, agrotechnical practices, and use of meadows as pasture, and urbanization. Second, factors directly connected with water diversion from the channel network, use of this water by different users, and return of used water to the water bodies that include lakes and reservoir. Third, factors affecting water balance was all about components by changing general meteorological and climatic characteristics. All these changes are caused by different processes. They vary greatly in intensity of effect and area of coverage. Solution for the problem: anthropogenic effects. Balance and connect. Human must manage to balance the use of resources in Earth to maintain the supply of resources. And human must connect to everything to know the behavior in life on Earth that include ecosystem, animals, plants, nature, and environment. Knowledge. People must have knowledge on how the Earth's life works that helps them to fully understand the condition and situation in Earth resources and life. Data and information. Human must continue the progress to continue to approach the modern world that leads to the modern solution, because data and information expand the capability of human to develop things that become solution to the problem.
What is an invasive species? An invasive species is an organism that causes ecological or economic harm in a new environment where it is not native. Invasive species can harm both the natural resources in an ecosystem as well as threaten human use of these resources. An invasive species can be introduced to a new area by the ballast water of ocean-going ships, intentional and accidental releases of aquaculture species, aquarium specimens or bait, and other means. Invasive species are capable of causing extinctions of native plants and animals, reducing biodiversity, competing with native organisms for limited resources, and altering habitats. This can result in huge economic impacts and fundamental disruptions of coastal and Great Lakes ecosystems.
Next is the epigenetics. First, what is epigenetics? Epigenetics is the study of how your behaviors and environment can cause changes that affect the way your genes work. Epigenetic changes are reversible and do not change your DNA sequence, but they can change how your body reads a DNA sequence. Since your environment and behaviors such as diet and exercise can result in epigenetic changes, it is easy to see the connection between your genes and your behaviors and environment. The question is, how does it work? Epigenetic changes affect gene expression in different ways, and there are three types of epigenetic changes. These are DNA methylation, histone modification, and non-coding RNA. First is DNA methylation. It works by adding a chemical group to DNA. Typically, this group is added to specific places on the DNA where it blocks the proteins that attach to DNA to read the gene. This chemical group can be removed through a process called demethylation. What is demethylation? It is the process of removal of a methyl group from cytosines, and demethylation can be passive or active. Next one is the histone modification. Histone modification are known to play important role in amplification, transcription, heterochromatin formation, chromatin compaction, and DNA damage repair. Histone proteins undergo post-translational modification or PTM in different ways, which impacts their interactions with DNA. Some genes are wrapped around histones and are turned off, while some genes are not around histones and are turned on. Chemical groups can be added or removed from histones and change whether a gene is on or off.
For the third process, RNA is a single-stranded structure that has four nitrogen bases, which are adenine, cytosine, uracil, and guanine. RNA associated silencing, specifically non-coding RNA, has its main functions to aid in controlling the genes. This is done by connecting it with the coding RNA that breaks its structures so that it cannot make proteins. Although the other proteins are used in altering histones, they are responsible for turning on and off our genes. In conservation, epigenetics holds a promising breakthrough towards its development in biological conservation. Based on its theoretical observations and findings, it may be revolutionary in creating or preserving genetics. Genometric tools have been experimented to evaluate the demographic parameters and the potential for its adaptation, strategize preservation, determining characterization among a population, eliminating taxonomic groups, and ESU. Thus, it enables us to know the ecological background of organisms, which we can modify their genes without changing the DNA sequence.
As can be seen through the topics, anthropogenic effects such as pollution, climate change, habit shifts, overexpopulation, and changes in invasive species or water cycles resulting from an anti-pore effects depend on the intensity of effect of pollution and the scope of the land, including forest, urban growth, or the land flowing. To solve the problem, people must have a balanced use of resources in the world to preserve their resource on Earth. People need to know how to work on the Earth's life helps them understand the conditions and situations in the resource and lives of the world fully. Human beings must maintain a modern world approach leading to a contemporary solution approach. The species is propagated and unusually controlled. We should take what we know of invasive species to learn about its environmental effects. For the epigenetics is making a promising breakthrough in its biological conservation development. It can be revolutionary in certain for preservation of genetics based on its theoretical observations and findings. Epigenetics is reinforceably because of some epigenetic drugs such as hematological malignancy are effective for cancer treatment. Recent developments in high-performance sequencing techniques having enabled epigenome profiling of various cell types in a normal pathological conditions. For diagnosis of disease, pregnancy, and treatment opportunities, epigenomic signatures may be useful. The purpose of continuous investigation and future field investigation is to underline the
epigenetic modifications of a variety of sources, including nutrition, psychological conditions, exposures to the environment, and early and late life, chemical and immunological conditions.